live coverage of the EUS Challenges Series number 10 with yours truly, Metis and Pulse. Unfortunately, I think we're having spectatorial problems again here, Pulse. I think this time around you're having the issues.
Yeah, possibly. You were in the lobby and I'm trying to spec up a friends list, and at the moment I'm just trying to, well, I'm trying to get in. Currently trying to do it over LolNexus, but it might just be a problem with my client. But until then, Messers, take over for now, and I'll see if I can get back into the action.
Alrighty, so it's basically just everything's been flipped upside down. Last time Pulse was in the lobby and I was spectating from stream. It doesn't seem to be faring any better this time either. But doesn't look like we're going to have any early action regardless with Instruments of Surrender. I'm going to refer to them as iOS because for some reason that name just doesn't compute in my brain. I can't just pull it out of the hat at a moment's instance. So iOS are just kind of lurking around their own river. Nobody's really moving. No one is really committing to anything. So it's probably going to be a standard kind of blue buff here for purple team and the red buff for blue. Jovan is fairly forward though, actually, around the Drake bush. So potentially going in for an invade. And by all means, Pulse, just jump in if you do get some luck, some fortune with the spectating issues.
Yep, I am just, well, hopefully this works. I'm trying it over LolNexus. And I think I'm on the loading screen, so take over for now and I'll jump in very shortly.
Alright, sweet. That is good news. So I was a bit worried in case there were some spectating issues with League of Legends, because it has happened in the past, Pulse, where we've had spectator issues as we were about to go live. But as I was saying before, purple taking blue and the blue team taking their red. So nothing to write home about here, Pulse. You're going to have the duo lanes at bot lane and the standard top lanes at top. So no lane switch-ups coming into effect.
Yep, and again, I'm still on the loading screen, but I have a fantastic view of people's skins.
Well, I think they're all diamond apart from Vayne last season, so this could very well be a smurf. But either way, the aforementioned Vayne is going to be bot lane, so Vayne, Sona up against Zyra and Caitlyn. Lots of poke potential on both sides here, but as we said earlier, it seems like forever ago now, Pulse, in the champion select first and foremost, that Vayne's got a really nice meat shield ahead of her in these team fights. Could very well open up and just go absolutely cataclysmically huge. You've got the Jarvan, you've got the Sona Crescendo and the Equalizer coming in from Rumble, and if things get a bit too hot to handle, intervention will come down from Kale. So definitely one to watch out for after feel here, Pulse. Nixar could be making big plays, but at top, Snake has been caught out of position. Wither comes down, will be flashing away, so that summoner spell has just been burnt.
Yep, I'm still trying to get in because LolNexus doesn't allow me to cast when it's live, so if there's some fear crafting I can do, I will jump into it, but of course being over the stream means I will be cutting into action, so again, just take it for a couple more minutes.
Oh, so you're still having issues then? I thought you were lucky to get in there, but I guess that's not going to be the case, so I will just try and pass it over to you every now and again then. But there is another pause coming in, Pulse, so this has just been one of those days, hasn't it, where nothing seems to want to work.
Well, it does give me a bit of time, maybe, to get into the game. And it should be spectatorable. Isn't the word I just made?
Spectatorable, copyright Pulse 2K13. That is in the dictionary right now.
Don't worry about it.
I'm trying to figure out what the problem is here, but seemingly neither team is trying to go forward with an answer. They have just asked if both are ready, and the go-go has been said as well, so hopefully it's going to be unpaused very shortly. But I wouldn't cross my fingers. There we go. The pause is coming underway, and I'm going to skip straight to live because of that bug to make sure I don't miss out on any of this glorious action. So there we go. I am live, and thus far, no early first bloods. Summoner, however, was burnt from Snake at the top lane. And now Staven is coming up as Jarvan. The lane bushes are not warded, so if Xanxus starts to get a bit too aggressive here, he could find himself in a really precarious position as I get that glorious message from Pulse that he is into the game now, so welcome, Pulse.
Thank you, and as you said, Snake up that top lane facing off against Xaxus. This is a fairly good lane for Rumble since you can scrap shield a lot of harassment coming in from Xaxus unless he all-ins him, and Jarvan also waiting in the sidelines as well, maybe looking to get this gank off. Well, on the bot lane, this is kind of what we expected to see. Like, Vayne is having a fairly hard time against Caitlyn right now and should be fairly even on the CS, but Vayne just hasn't been completely shut down, and this is what I was actually talking about before when you weren't in the game, Mess, is that she doesn't have a terrible laning phase, and she can actually outplay Caitlyn, and she kind of maneuver around her and just pick up some of the CS, and as long as she gets out of the laning phase with a decent CS score, she's going to be really, really strong.
It's very true. If you go back to Season 2, I'm an AD carry player. I love playing Vayne. I have since she was released. Season 2, the major downfall of Vayne was that early game she was very weak. She was easily bullied by the likes of Caitlyn, who she's now facing off against. But Season 3 has started to come more to prominence. I feel personally, Pulse, a lot of that is down to Blade of the Ruined King. It is just a perfect item for Vayne. Pretty much 100% of Vayne players, if you have any idea about this game, are going to pick up the Blade of the Ruined King at some point. Most of them will rush it first. But speaking of Vayne, actually taking quite a lot of harassment damage there from Kellever, but they are going to be pushing right back in. Staven round from the side, needs to be careful though, doesn't want to overextend because Nixar is very heavily tagged up at the back and he is going to be pulling himself back. But as you said, Pulse, Season 2, Vayne, weak early game. Now it's fairly decent. We've got some action in mid though.
Yeah, NASA's looking for this gank to happen, slowly chasing after this Kayle, looping around the wall. Great Ward comes down, keeping that vision alive, flash over the wall. Overpound just walks on back to lane, quite aware that needs to make sure that he can keep on the CS, but that's a flash burn. And Warhunter is kind of in a precarious position where Zed could maybe just open up on her. He is nearly level 6 and Kayle is not, so this could be a good opportunity for him to all-in with Deathmark.
It's definitely the window of opportunity, because once the intervention does come up, and that's exactly what we're going to do, is jumping on with the Ignite as well. Is the Deathmark pop going to be enough? No, it's not. And also was forced to flash as well. So Warhunter will manage to survive by the skin of his teeth. And you got to say, with that flash going down as well, doesn't look too good for Overpow. He uses Ignite as well there, so both his summoners and his ulti are down, Pulse, but he does have the advantage over Warhunter, who's going to have to go back. That recall has just been cancelled, however.
Yeah, honestly, he probably could have gone deeper there, but knowing that Jarvan was just around the corner, Warhunter jumping onto Overpower as well, and Staven just following with those auto attacks, no flash to keep him safe, but if he does require him to actually land this final auto attack, jukes the Dragon Strike, but the first blood comes down for Staven.
I'm really surprised there, Pulse, that he stayed around for that long.
Yeah.
Must have realised the intervention was going to be on the table right now for Warhunter, who'd leveled up to 6 behind the tower, with that recall actually being cancelled from Overpower. So maybe a bit too greedy there. Hubris was his downfall, but regardless, that first blood going into the hands of Staven. And we've said this time and time again that you give Jarvan a few kills and he is going to snowball very hard from the jungle.
Yeah, that's perfect for his lanes as well, because Jarvan is that classic carry, early game ganking jungle, and he looks to get those ganks off in those lanes in the laning phase, and if he's got a good start, and currently 1-0 is a very good start indeed, that he can keep up the pressure in all of those lanes, and in fact looking to maybe pressure down bot lane as well. Kellever and Limited Reversal need to get out of here, probably enough mana for one grasping root, lands it on 2 people as well. Demoko does not have his ultimate and is very low on mana indeed, but Flag and Drag comes down, and Limited Reversal only had one grasping roots available to him. That's enough to stop the gank from happening.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people speak about Zyra in terms of her damage output as a support, but what they don't mention too often is the huge amount of CC that she brings, not just with the grasping roots, but also with the plants, and of course that ultimate, the Stranglethorn. So definitely one to watch out for. Nasus did come down, but really it was fairly fruitless in the end. It is going to be recalling, so potentially Staven's going to try an engage here, but Nasus cancelled his recall just for a few moments. So it's just hanging around here, Paul, so I'm not too sure what's happening. Is he just baiting out for Jarvan to try and make a play?
He wants to counter gank, it looks like, because there's no ward in that brush. He's kind of recalling, seeing if Jarvan shows his face and then he can just complete that recall. But the fact that he's staying around, I think he's expecting this gank to happen because the Cataclysm is up. Spirit Fire goes down, and Nasa's actually given the game away, thinking, well, there's no way that Jarvan's still here. And honestly, had he just stayed in that bush, he would have actually been able to counter gank, and he might have picked up the kill onto the Monko or even Nixara as well. And now Jarvan's still looking for that gank.
Again, it's those windows of opportunity though, because Jarvan hasn't gone back since getting that first blood, so he's got over 1,000 gold in his back pocket, so he's not really reaping the benefits of the first blood gold right now. So it would have been a nice little time to engage there from Nasus, but Jarvan will be going back to his wolves, picking them up very comfortably, burning the smite in the process. So purple team more than likely not going to be opting to rush that Drake in the next minute or so, but judging from their tower, judging from their support, it's not going to be on the cards regardless, because surprise surprise, Caitlyn is bullying this lane. It's what she's just renowned for, Pulse. Being a lane bully, harassing it down, pushing the tower down as soon as physically possible.
Yeah, and with that 20 CS advantage as well, in good shape, trying to keep this Vayne suppressed. And as we were saying before, actually it was quite a long time ago now, Metas, even though it's the same game. The composition is really focused around this Vayne, but meanwhile top lane we've got the gank coming in from Nasus with a lance as well, juking into this brush, and Snake knows he's dead. Just stands there and takes it. Bit of damage in return to Xaxis, but there's no way he's escaping. We're on bot lane. Nixar aggressing onto Zeleven, knocks him straight into the tower and completely locks him down against that wall. Limited reversal ticks down with the ignite, immediately gets dropped. 4-man gank coming in here, and there's no way that limited reversal passive can reclaim any kills. Overpower comes down as well, but not fast enough.
Yeah, really nice timing play as well, because as I mentioned previously, Smite was used on walls. It has just came off cooldown again for Staven, so it was looking like if they'd got that a bit cleaner with that kill and backed off, they could have very well rushed the Drake. But because intervention, as you said, was used from Warhunter onto himself just to keep himself alive off the tower, he has to go back to spawn. And here comes Nasus. This is the reason he is so strong early game. Fury of the Sands comes down, a very quick free Drake coming out here for ex-Anexis. So beautiful capitalization there on a weakened side that had to go back to spawn.
Yeah, they took down the bot lane, but then they weren't able to contest the Drake, and there was no way they could have stayed around. And then therefore, ex-Anexis knew that if they just waited until they recall, they can pick up another objective in return. So very smart thinking and fast reaction. Meanwhile, top lane, Xaxis agresses so heavily onto Rumble, knocking from 100% to about 40% in a heartbeat. Xaxis' damage is just so strong right now. 30 seconds until his ignite, he can do that all over again, and they have the ability to completely shut down Rumble.
Yes, it's not just the kill that's gone down, it's the fact he doesn't have his flash back up either. He's a level behind, and also finds himself a good 25 or so CS behind as well of Xaxis. So this Elise is looking very powerful right now. Snake is not in a good position. However, Staven's coming up, the equalizer has been used, the repel comes out from Elise. That's some beautiful juking right there. She should be able to escape this one. Indeed she will. So that was not just an equalizer burnt, but also a kind of fruitless gank as well for Staven, who's going to have his recall cancelled right now from that cheeky little spiderling.
Yeah, and the other thing with that, Staven might now think that that bush is warded because of that spiderling coming down. Lol's dead, actually finds himself Staven. He might be able to trade off very well in this scenario. With Overpower looking to Living Shadow over the wall as well. Doesn't follow up on it, just enough to move Staven back. But that does prevent that gank from happening, and from Nasus' perspective, that's absolutely perfect. He's not the early ganking jungler, but what he is really good at doing is counter-ganking. So the jungler comes in, he withers one of the targets, they can either disengage or they can go all in.
It's very, very true. Hit the nail on the head. And the other thing about Nasus as well is that early game he does have that potential with the Fury of the Sands, as you mentioned before, on Drake, but it's really mid to late pulse where Nasus comes into his own, where he becomes that scary powerhouse. The Wither is going to completely cripple Nixar's Vayne as well. So I would expect a Quicksilver Sash on Vayne, maybe third or fourth item. Reckless in particular likes to build the Blade of the Rune King into Phantom Dancer and then into Static Shiv. So I'm interested to see how Nixar approaches the Vayne build. Interestingly enough, does have the shield here, the Doran shield, as Staven is just hiding around the sides, comes in with a flag and drag. It's going to be Cataclysm onto limits of reversal. Who do they aim for though? Stranglethorns hits all three. Are they going to try a counter-attack here? Zyra's trying her best to get back to the Sanctuary of Nasus. Will manage to do so. Crescendo lands, but they don't want to follow this one up because that Fury of the Sands Nasus is oh so scary. And at the end of that trade, that's going to be a 0 for 0 as Kale comes in from the side.
Yeah, and that was the counter guy. Nasa's still looking for blood though. Kellever actually follows up on this as well. Piltover whiffs, but Kel wasn't able to do anything. At least escaped with her life. Still had the flash if everything went south. But that's the counter ganking potential of Nasa's coming through there, even when he was slightly behind. Zax is now moving on to Snake as well, and really starting to bully Rumble around. And it's really looking to see how they play this out, because Vayne first needs to get into that mid-late game scenario, into those team fights where she becomes oh so strong, just like Nasus. We may even see a Mikhail's coming in from Demonco as well, just to try and keep Nixar away from that CC. And Limited Reversal clearing out another ward. Staven perhaps looking to get this gank off. He does have that pink ward around the area, but again, he's just wasting time, and this is, as a jungler, it becomes very difficult, because it's striking a balance between waiting around and potentially getting a kill and making all that time you spent worth it, or in fact a kill going down at the bottom as Ignite comes down to limited reversal. That might just be enough by itself, plus the auto attack, instant hold comes out, barrier comes down as well from Nixar. Demonko uses himself as a human shield, just in the way of Nixar, and that's a kill, 1-0.
Nice little trade, and I feel that was like the last tick of Ignite there, Pulse. That looked really, really close, but at the end of the day, that is going to be a 1-0 trade. But with that being said, though, you can see for yourself that the difference in global gold is about 2k, and of course it's going to be partially down to the Drake, but also the CS differentials around the map are definitely favouring the side of ex-Anexis. Look at top, 120 to 78 CS that Elise is currently winning, and as you mentioned previously, Pulse, Caitlyn is battering Vayne on CS. That's 136 to 98. Not too bad.
Not at all. And in that top lane as well, 126 to 78. It's Rumble's not having a fun time. They do have the base damages, so in a team fight, they're still going to be strong. And it's really just a matter of, can they get themselves to that place with their abilities, their just flat abilities, and get themselves into a good position. Because at the moment, we've got the push coming in from ex-Anexis, and Warden finds himself caught by the grasping roots as well. But they're just hammering away at these turrets. And if they can't get themselves into a team fight before that even happens, then they're in a bad position. The Flag and Drag comes down, Flash comes out from Nasus, and that actually might put them in a good shape if they do try to get themselves into a fight.
Yeah, that was, I'm not too sure about you, Pulse, but I'm a bit surprised they actually flashed out of that one. I didn't feel there was a huge amount of damage that would have been, you know, following up the potential cataclysm afterwards. But regardless, better safe than sorry. And Nasus remains on high HP, so they can go for take number 2 on this tower, which has only got about 267 health points remaining. So this doesn't look like it's going to last for too much longer. That being said, though, seemingly ex-Anexis aren't too interested. They're going to pull themselves back.
Yeah, so Staven and Demonko just in that mid lane. Overpower currently 135 CS, so fairly similar to Kale. Everyone farming fairly decently in this game so far. Leaving that to a 1 versus 1 lane down at the bot lane. Final Hour gets popped as well. He can definitely out-trade Caitlyn in this type of scenario. Kellever juking into the brush, looking for this condemn. In fact, it's already down. 7 seconds left on that one. And Kellever gets himself out. Nasa's coming down, walks himself through 2 wards. So Vayne knows exactly what's coming to her. It's just a matter of whether they can fight this one out.
Yeah, and you can see that Kellever right now is just trying to bait this one. He's like, come on, Nixar, can't you, bro? I've got a huge dog in the bush there that is just going to pop out and roll your face off. But Nixar realizing that Caitlyn is very aggressive for somebody with fairly low HP and does just back himself away. His tower is also on bare minimum health as well, 111 remaining. This is going to be a 3 versus 3 situation if it kicks off, but those grasping roots are going to stop this one in its tracks. Kale was also coming down bot because Drake has respawned, and actually they're going to be starting this one off. So it is a 3 versus 4 situation as it stands, but it's not a huge amount of distance for Zed to travel if he so chooses. Looks like they're going to exchange this tower for the Drake here. Here comes Doda from the side. The Crescendo has landed, and the Cataclysm as well. And as tanky as Nasus is, he is falling in a heartbeat. That's going to be 1 kill. They are looking for the second as well on Overpower, but they need to be careful because here comes Caitlyn from the side. She's picked up 1. Zed duking out that final damage with a beautiful death mark. Does manage to pick himself up a kill at the end there. That's a 2 for 2 exchange thus far, but here comes Caitlyn looking for the ace in the hole. It's going to land on the target, bringing it to a 3 for 2 exchange, but the Drake did go down there for ex-Anexis, so quite interesting plays. In fact, not ex-Anexis, my apologies, iOS.
iOS, yes indeed. So they did come out slightly ahead, but in that scenario, completely kind of outplayed, honestly. Even though Nasus completely fell, that's a lot of HP to chunk through, and big cooldowns were used on him as well. So they didn't have enough for a limited reversal, and Caitlyn is on top of that. So they basically just didn't have the ability to carry on fighting, even though they stayed in. Kellever just had the sustained damage to keep them going. And honestly, limited reversal has been really on point so far with those big Stranglethorns and the Grasping Roots. So the Grasping Roots down the bot lane hits 2 people. In the team fight, Stranglethorns hits another 2 or 3 people as well. Meanwhile, at bot lane, Nixar now aggressing onto Kellever, and it looks like there's no escape this time. Still has to condemn to lock him up against that turret, but knocks him away further from him. Doesn't work out at all. Some angling mistakes there, Messers.
Ooh, that was painful to watch, honestly. I feel that maybe Nixar had already planted the condemn in his mind before he saw the barrier go off when he was trying to finish that kill, or maybe trying to proc off the silver bolts, but he was only on one of the procs, and of course it will go off on 3, so it wasn't enough damage, and in doing so actually pushed Kellever to safety. Now Zaxxas has found himself a stave, and look at that burst damage, absolutely huge, but is going to be able to go back to Sanctuary of Snake. That was a 3-level differential though. Zaxxas is looking incredibly strong here, 171 CS.
And Overpower just death marked and deleted deleted Jarvan in a blink of an eye. I was just going to say Zaxxas is something we haven't really seen much of because he's just been sitting at the top lane and not a factor we've really put into our equation, but Overpower just makes that situation turn in their favour anyway. But when Elise does eventually get into these team fights, you could see it being very difficult to deal with. In fact, if they just leave it up top lane, they can just commit, it forces them to commit one of their members who is probably more valuable, but more bot lane. This is round 2 for Vayne, who once again pushes Caitlyn away with the condemn. I'm pretty sure she still could have won out in that trade.
It's a weird on a bot lane, isn't it? It's like both of them are really laying into each other, but thus far it's fairly close. You've got 2-0-1 Caitlyn, who arguably should be on 2-1-1 after that previous engage, and Vayne is 1-0-2, so both AD carries thus far have not fallen, and they've both been positioning very well in these team fights, but still Caitlyn does have the resounding CS lead. As you'd expect though, if you go into solo queue in particular, Caitlyn is revered as being a hard counter to Vayne, just purely on that kind of lane bullying mentality. She has the longer range, she has the headshot procs as well. There's not a great deal that Vayne can do, just has to basically stand by the tower and just farm up when she can.
Yeah, Caitlyn's the type of character who will grind you down in lane, and what Vayne has in that lane scenario, which we've seen a couple times, is the all-in potential. She can pop Final Hour, and then in a 1 versus 1 in a straight-up trade, she'll probably win. She has more damage in that scenario. However, in the lane, Caitlyn can just auto-attack back off, and Vayne's never able to land all 3 of those stacks and silver bolts and eventually proc it. So Vayne just loses out in that laning phase. However, in the all-in, then she's in a much better position. Black Drag comes down, lands onto the rinse of reversal. Nothing really behind him though to follow up. Rumble on the sidelines, and they are kind of committing themselves very, well, a bit too much with Overpower on the side. Has been revealed by the ward. Ping goes down. And now he's kind of in the middle of no man's land. See if Staven can follow up on this one. He does have the Cataclysm. Gonna make sure he doesn't use the Living Shadow to get out. Still has the flash as well if he decides to commit it. But the Deathmark comes down. Looks like he's looking to take someone out with him. Crescendo comes out and he's locked up for a good 5 seconds.
Oh, and Sona actually survived. She
Yeah.
actually survived with Aria of Perseverance coming to her rescue right at the end. That was like 1 tick away again from being dead, but meanwhile at top lane, while all that action happens at bot, it's fair enough that 2 of your players have died, but you've picked up that tower, and overall I think ex-Anexis is going to be fairly happy with that trade.
And meanwhile, in mid lane, Warhunter trades off Limited Reversal. Limited Reversal came in with the ultimate. Great intervention, actually mitigates all of that damage. And then realised he's up against the carry. Support versus carry, it doesn't take a great mathematician to know how that's going to turn out. Zaxxas kind of moving around along with LOL's dead. And there is no objective to fight over, so just got to make sure not to get caught out.
The irony of that name when he's playing at Challenger tier level and competitions for money is a bit too hard there. But regardless, it's a very close game here, Pulse, because you can see 5-8 doesn't look too happy for ex-Anexis, but then you look at the goal difference, then you look at the tower difference, it's like, oh, okay, this is looking a bit more, happy times for ex-Anexis, but the composition coming out here for Instruments of Surrender, it's all centered around the Vayne, and this is something that we said in Champion Select. It's a heavy burden to share here for Dr. Nixar, because he must realize that if he dies early in that team fight, his team are going to get crushed. They don't have the sustained damage to go up along the likes of ex-Anexis' Caitlyn, and the Zed and Nasus as well, and Elise, who's been farming phenomenally well at the top lane. So there is a lot of pressure for Vayne in this game.
Yeah, there just isn't any follow-up without that Vayne. That being said, Intervention is a great tool to keep herself alive, along with the Cataclysm and the front line they have in general. If they instigate the fight, if they initiate the fight, they'll be in a good position, because it means Vayne's on the back line, all the big ultimates from ex-Anexis are going to be forced to be used on that front line, and then Vayne, of course, will be safe. It's all down to that positioning, and all about how these team fights start, and if Nixar gets caught out, because he is attacking behind his team, and the trouble comes down, Ace the Hole comes out out as well. Along with Dragonforce, look at 5 people. The entire team of Instruments of Surrender. Intervention comes down straight onto Staven, drops so low. Overpower drops low as well, but backs out. Deathrock comes down, annihilating one of the members of Instruments of Surrender. Caliber now, Snake in this 1 versus 4 situation. Doesn't do enough to finish. In fact, I say that, but double kill comes down from Caliber, but gets dropped in his own right by Snake, and that's the ace. 2 for 5.
Okay, a couple things in that team fight that kind of caught me off guard. One is that Dr. Nixar's positioning was subpar. I mean, he had to flash from the very front lines of his team to the back just to stop himself getting insta-gibbed from Zed. So he burnt the flash just to get out of dodge and flashed onto Stranglethorn. Stranglethorn's hit, I think, 4 out of 5 players. So again, like you were saying, Limited Reversal's just been doing such a good job in these team fights. And secondly, Kayle popped her ultimate, I believe, on herself. So that left the death mark for Zed and all the damage afterwards on Vayne. Vayne got instantly popped in that team fight, and we saw the end of it there. Caitlyn just mopped up. Yes, she fell to Rumble, but the damage had already been done. So that was a 4 or 5 for 2 trade plus a Drake.
Yeah, absolutely huge right now for Anexis, and it's just that advantage. It's kind of like a more hidden advantage than the straight-up kills, because you look at the kills and it's like, oh, it's 10-5, and therefore they must be winning. But right now it's 10-10, 5 towers over Instruments of Surrender, and also they're in a good CS advantage in most of the lanes, if not all of them. In fact, all of them, even in the jungle as well. Can't say too much for the supports, but all over the board, they are just winning out in every category. So Anexis in those team fights should, on paper, win, and in fact that's exactly what happened. As you said though, Metas, we did see Nixar get caught at the start of the fight, and with that flash burn, if they go for the next team fight, they're not going to have those cooldowns available. That's another tool to keep her alive. Again, didn't happen, she dropped too early. And another point you brought up before, Metas, is that it's so much responsibility to put on one person. One screw up, one tumble in the wrong direction, and your team fight's lost.
Exactly, because one tumble in the wrong direction, and Zed's licking his lips and he just rolled your face off.
Yeah.
So it is a matter of milliseconds here for Nixar. It's a lot of pressure to put on one player. And as we saw in that last team fight, it just didn't work for them. Have a quick look at the AD carries differential on items. Caitlyn has an Infinity Edge, Phantom Dancer, and a pickaxe. Once she has the last Whisper, she's going to be very, very happy. Whereas Vayne has Blade of the Rune King Zeal. That is just a massive, colossal difference in pure damage output. Here comes Staven, cataclysming in. That is nice. Equalizer as well, but the intervention has been used onto Jarvan. So that is going to leave Vayne fairly open for Zed to just go crazy with. She's actually at the front lines here, going for Caliber. This is a beautiful play. Jumping in, does get trapped at the end, however. So they're trying their best to turn this one round, iOS. They've picked up the second kill. And actually, for all the talking we've been doing about, Vayne has a lot of responsibility, pulling out the stops there. Meanwhile, though, at the top, Overpower's picked up a tower and looking like it's going to be a kill as well. And then you've got the side of iOS going straight down the middle, so it's just a tale of 2 battles right now. These teams going head-to-head. Zaxxas coming under a lot of attack. Here comes the Wither again, but a beautiful Q coming in from Kayle. Not enough damage to claim the kill of the dog. So I need to catch my breath there, Pulse. A lot of stuff just happened.
Yeah, just at the very end, the Nixar was just locked underneath the turret. Wither actually came to its conclusion and essentially just kept Vayne in her place. It was just that strong. Actually saved both of them, so one Wither essentially meant that 2 kills were denied from that Vayne. While that entire team fight was happening, what the Nexus were looking for was just to kind of stall them, because it was a great ultimate. The Stranglethorns hit another 4 people, I think, in that fight, and even though they dropped very low and they lost a couple members in the process, they kept themselves alive for so long. It allowed Zed to pick up the bot turret and also kill Staven when he came along as well, because Overpower has just so much burst at this stage. And we look at that team fight and we'd generally be like, well, it looks like Instrument Surrender just won that pretty confidently. Vayne got some kills and they initiated well. But the fact that it was a 4 versus 5 and Overpower picks up a turret bot lane, all of a sudden, it doesn't look so good. And ex-Anexis, again, it won another team fight by proxy.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. And I said this earlier in the game, that Vayne is going to need an early Quicksilver Sash. And that's what she's gone for as a second item, so to speak, after the Zeal. It's just the case that she's clearly feeling the heat right now. But typically, Vayne doesn't want to be getting Quicksilver Sash until that Phantom Dancer is finished off. There's a big power spike there in Phantom Dancer because of the Silver procs, Silver Bolt procs coming off with the attack speed that Phantom Dancer gives you and the kiting potential. with the Phantom Dancer's movement speed increase, but Kellever has actually just been caught out of position. 90 calibering net through the wall there, overpower going out, so that equalizer is basically for naught, but can Vayne go huge on Kellever? It's going to be a 1 versus 1, damage to death, but here comes Zach from the Zed from the side, I should say, picks up that kill comfortably. Intervention again being used for Jarvan, so they're not going for the Vayne here. That's going to be Kellever falling, but at what cost? Because Snake is so low. They're now turning this one around. It's a 2-for-1 trade. But Overpow is trying his best to escape from Warhunter, who's coming in, has popped off the Divine Blessing, so heal's not going to be back up. You have Nasus behind, that is going to be a very dead kill, as the intervention was used previously. A 4-for-1 trade and an inhib at the very least, Paul, so this could be the GG.
This very well could be the good game, and the fact that they were so fixated on Overpower, currently level 18, so is Zaxxas, and right now it's just down to Jarvan 1 versus 4 to try his best, but just gets completely annihilated and deleted from this game. Ace comes down, this is surely the game as well. Nexar tries his luck as well. It does do some damage to Nasus, but the second Nexus turret falling, this does look indeed to beat the game. But they were just so fixated on Overpower in the last team fight, they just weren't able to kill the rest of the team and let Kellever just rip into their front line. And that was the end of that story.
Interestingly enough, you look at the last team fight, the last 3 or 4 team fights, up until that point it was pretty close.
Yeah.
But they lost every team fight comfortably. Even when Vayne got a couple kills and they pushed down the middle and it was like a 2-for-2, 3-for-3 trade, they still managed to pick up a inhib tower ex-Anexis. So even when they were going even in trades in terms of kills, they were coming out ahead on objectives. Have a look at the end there. 8 towers destroyed from ex-Anexis, 1 from Instruments of Surrender. That tells the story in a nutshell, Pauls. The objective control from ex-Anexis was just sublime throughout the game.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, and we'll have to see if they change up their strategy when we come into the second game of this best of 3. So anyway, guys, we'll jump into a quick commercial break, and when we get back, as I said, we'll be in the second game of this best of 3. See you soon.